But it doesn't stop there, because you see, there's economic impacts on your society that ethically flushes your whole society. Because what happened was that because of the huge tax rates, people had to live. And for them to live, it created dishonesty within the society. That in Germany, they have what they call black money. You work under the table for extra hours to earn cash under the table to be able to live. It's true of all of Europe. Businesses are forced to keep 2-3 sets of books. Can you see the ethical quagmire that comes out of this? It gets to the point where people are living a lie. It gets to the point where situational ethics starts to come about. Don't kid yourself if you think it won't happen here. Go ahead. Do we value life? Do we really, in this country, value a life? Go to the next slide. Funny word, eugenics. You ever heard that word before? Anybody? It became famous in Nazi Germany, which I'll get to in a minute. But it is the applied science of biosocial movement, which advocates the practices aimed at improving genetic composition of the population, usually referring to the manipulation of human populations. The origins of this concept of eugenics began with the interpretation of theories by August Weismann, all about the turn of the last century, 1900, 1915, in that vicinity. It widely embraced Darwinism and social Darwinism. It was made popular in the early decades of the 20th century. The first International Congress of Eugenics in 1912 was supported by many prominent persons, including its president, Leonard Darwin, son of Charles Darwin, honorary vice president, Winston Churchill, first Lord of the Admiralty and future Prime Minister of England, Auguste Fourier, famous Swiss pathologist, Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. By the way, that little company called AT&T, that Alexander Graham Bell, you want to talk about moral ethics? Do you know to this day it's the largest supporter of pornography in America? Largest supporter of gay rights in America? So going back to its company's founder, they're leading into the ethic issues. Who else? Anyway, here's basically what happens with eugenics. You take and make decisions based upon what you believe is right. It got famous during World War II with the Nazis, where they devalued life. Those who were disabled, homosexual, gypsies, and Jews were considered non-humans. Later, this was expanded to include political prisoners, POWs, artists, writers, filmmakers, and even Christians, Bonhoeffer, where you were selected and chosen that your life doesn't matter to the good of the population. That is what's behind the healthcare movement in America. Selectively choosing who lives and who dies. It's going to get to the point where we're going to have discriminatory practices by our medical company. You get old and see what happens. Oh, I'm sorry, that we won't cover that. Or we won't give you that care. Or we will price discriminate because you had that illness to the point where you can't afford care, so we're not going to give it to you anyway. To the point where just die. It's back, as they said in the video we saw, with a vengeance. This is where our healthcare is. This is the big gorilla that's behind the healthcare movement in America. A total devalue of humanity. Prior to the Civil War, America practiced a form of this. It was a landmark decision of Dred Scott, where we devalued the life of African Americans. It goes all the way back to Roman times with the 12 tablets of rule. One of the 12 tablets of rule is if a disabled child is born, kill it. If the child is sick, kill it. I was born with birth defects. I have one leg shorter than the other. I have one side of my body smaller than the other. If this was practiced in our today's society, I would not be standing here. And Lord help, if I was born 30 years from now, I might not be standing here. You might not be standing here. throw some questions at you. You could roll the slide. Are we going to kill babies because we know they're distorted or disabled? Why don't we just, the facility that you do maintenance with? Where?
Cades.
Cades. What do they do at Cades?
They help kids with cerebral palsy.
They help kids with cerebral palsy. If eugenics would be totally practiced, we would just take AK-47s, dig a big hole, kill them all. Don't kid yourself if you don't think it will happen here. There's a story one of the doctors from the Mayo Clinic tells in the video that you're going to see on Thursday night if you choose to participate. He talks about there's a family, and I don't know the disease, but this family has one child. The one child has a disease that can only be cured by a bone marrow transplant. And the best treatment, the best possibility scenario is having a sibling that will donate that bone marrow transplant. The family decides to have another child, but they want to do it intelligently. So they have 12 embryos. They test all the embryos and eliminate the 6 or so that have the defective gene. Because they don't want to have another kid born with the same disease, so they kill those embryos off. Then they test those embryos further to determine which of those embryos would have the best match to their current daughter. They end up having a son. But the other 11 get flushed. Genetic biology, biotechnology. Is it right for us to kill off all those potential children? Are they potential children or are they children? Do you and I have the right to make a decision concerning our loved ones who are sick? Or is it the government's job? Is it going to be some bureaucrat with a pencil checking off saying, no, she's not worthy of saving? Go to the next slide. We have the elderly. I have parents that are in their 80s. I sat there with my mom this past fall. I know she has an aneurysm. I know she's having surgery next month. I know what's going to happen if, I just know. I know the worst case scenario. Right now we have a choice. 10 years from now they might say, someone who's 83 years old who has an aneurysm 4 inches above her heart on the aorta, is not worthy of surgery, so let her die. Next slide. It's a person. Next slide. Do you value life? What if eugenics comes to bear with all our practices in medicine and biotechnology today? Will we abort kids with birth defects? Will we abort or kill those who are born with disabilities? Will we abort children just because we desire a male offspring or a female offspring? Will we stop providing health care to the elderly when they are sick? What if you had a child who had a disability or a birth defect, and the government health care system said, they don't matter, they're not a person? What if our society chose to kill off all those who are disabled because of the cost of treatment? Don't kid yourself and don't think we're going there. I'm not an alarmist, I'm a realist. I'm trying to tell you what the worldview that we're dealing with. We do not value life. We don't. We're not a Christian nation. We never were. How are you going to live it out? This morning it's in your court. Do you really know your faith? The whole story behind apologetics is not defending the faith. It's knowing how to intelligently communicate and speak it to someone else to persuade them to believe what you believe through the aid of the Holy Spirit. what I hate about Christianity, we get this image of a bunch of people in a soapbox with an axe wielding, screaming at the top of our lungs like we're buffoons and idiots. We should be the most intelligent, the most gracious, the most loving, the most selfless people on the planet, who are willing to share and serve and love. You know, you want to see revival? I pray for revival. I have a friend from Sri Lanka. V is an amazing kid. V sat there one night at a Bible study that I had the privilege of sitting in. He goes, I don't understand you Christians. I really don't. You don't have any tribulation in America. No one's out to kill you. In my country, if I said I'm a Christian, I'd be dead and beaten and naked in the street somewhere. How do you do it? How do you live? How do we live without someone hating us? Someone wanting to kill us because... Do you know that during the times of Caesar, when the persecution was the greatest during the Roman Empire, do you know Christians didn't petition Caesar for relief of persecution, relief of the penalty of being a Christian? You know what they advocated? They went before Caesar and pleaded with him to stop the practice of one of the 12 tables of the law. They petitioned, quit killing babies. They didn't care about themselves. During the great plagues of Europe, do you know what happened? Do you know why Christianity exploded? It's because when all the doctors and all the religious people and all the really cool people left town because people were dying by the droves, you know who stayed behind? Christians, to serve and to care and to love people and to share truth with them. Listen, I don't know where our nation's going to end up. I really don't. If you say you're pro-life this morning, how do you exercise your vote? Is this a negotiable choice? When you talk to your local politician, do you ask them, where do you stand on life? Or are you more concerned about getting that stop sign at the end of your street? Where are you on ethics? Are you going to live it out? It's a challenge, people. Are we going to talk to our school board people and say, this is what we believe and this is what our kids should be hearing, and quit teaching all the junk? One of the reasons why my kids are homeschooled is because I could not believe that they spent the entire year, 1 year in elementary school, talking about the Revolutionary period of America. And you know what they talked about for the entire revolutionary history of America? For a whole year, they talked about how we displaced the Indians. How we were evil and bad to the Indians. I said, well, what about all the good stuff? What about the fact that the only place that you have absolute freedom in religion is in this township? William Penn founded this thing in 1685. And for almost 150 years, it was the only place in the entire British Empire that someone could choose to be a Jew, choose to be a Muslim, choose to be a Christian without fear of any persecution. It was the only place in the entire English-speaking world. Here. Not on the other side of the state. Here. Right here. And you failed to talk about it to the kids? What kind of conversation would you have with your school board? Our school board. Think about how you're living your life. Think about what you do you really believe what you believe? Or are you just coming and hanging and playing church? I love you guys. I wanted this message to be not an alarm, but to be an awareness. I want you to be aware of where our society is going, so that when you talk to people, you can intelligently talk about reality. Because people will support whatever is putting money in your pockets. And that's the bottom line with politics in America. We don't get to talk about reason. We don't talk about truth. We need to talk about truth. We need to bring God into our conversations. How are you going to live? Are you going to do the right thing? Or are you just going to go with whatever the crowd wants to support? It's your call. It's your diary. We love you.